What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Soul Fresh Podcast. I'm your host, BK, and joining me today is my guest host, Mike Jones from the Controversial Conversation Podcast. He's always bringing that unfiltered perspective to the table. Today, we're continuing our Warner Robins election series, giving you real conversations with the people running to lead our city forward. Joining us today is Fabian Velazquez, a local business owner and lifelong Warner Robins resident who's now stepping into the race for mayor of Warner Robins. We're diving into his vision for the city, from tackling youth crime and housing affordability to revitalizing the Northside and creating opportunities for local families and businesses. And just like always, we're keeping it real. We're going to ask the real questions that matter most to the people who live, work, and raise families right here in our community. So let's get to it. All right, Mr. Velazquez, how you doing?
Pretty good. Nice to be here.
Yeah, welcome to the Soul Fresh Podcast. So we're going to go and get right into it. And like I said, we're going to, fair questions, honesty, transparency. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it on over to Mike. Go ahead and get it started.
All right,
so we're going to start with crime. That seems to be the main pillar of your platform. And going through your website, it states, that you jumped into this race when you had a conversation with a client, and then you transitioned into a couple other crimes that have been committed. I guess, as somebody who's about the data, do you feel that some of the things that you're talking about are isolated incidents, or do you have more of the data points to back that up to say that crime is up in comparison to not using city numbers, but even with 13 WMAZ saying there's a reduction in crime? Do you feel that maybe they're off, or do you feel like there's things that you've seen, or are there other data points that we're just not privy to?
I don't think the numbers clearly actually tell the full story, because it's the lived experience of a lot of the people in Warner Robins that they're feeling a difference. And you can clearly see a difference, particularly where Warner Robins High School and Northside High School is. I know many of the teachers that taught me back, I graduated in 2019, they're just not sending their kids to those schools anymore. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them have actually left. So the numbers, I think when I saw the podcast with the mayor, she discussed how, they were using the more serious versions of the crime. So they didn't really talk about simple assault. They talked about aggravated assault.
Okay.
But if you look at the numbers of simple assault, they're up, and they've continued to go up in the last 4 years. And so to me, it just doesn't quite make sense, the idea that aggravated assault would go down, but you're seeing a lot more of these other minor instances go up. And why not include all those minor instances with the overall total when you're discussing the crime, particularly property crime, because more people are noticing vehicles getting broken into. Mm-hmm. And, if you're going to have an honest discussion about crime, the truth is that it's almost like a snowball effect. These little things pile up, and, one minor inconvenience to someone ends up growing into like a murder or something like that, because most people don't just go out and murder someone on the first criminal offense. I think it's after 11 offenses or 11 run-ins with the law, they might be committing their first murder or something like that.
Okay, so I'm hearing you say that lived experience and conversations with community is leading you to see that Warner Robins, as of right now, isn't as safe as being presented in, whether it's the media, whether it's the numbers from the city, or whatever it may be. And if that is the case, you said more so it seems like simple assaults and things like that rather than aggravated assaults. What would be something that you're leading towards, whether it's intervention or some type of plan or proposal that you feel would actively kind of handle that? Because as you said, crime isn't just perpetuated in that way, and we understand that there's root causes of crime. But if these things aren't necessarily like lack of property, lack of homes or whatever, and it's like actually an assault, what are your plans on addressing that, other than, as we hear, more police on the street?
So I wanted to correct the point that you said earlier on about how crime was my main pillar of my platform. It's the most in your face part, because that's the one that people get scared of. And so, really, my main platform is about city development. You have to start to question, well, these crimes weren't happening 20 years ago, but now they are. And you have to start looking at what's different about the city. And the city has been growing a lot, particularly expansion. And as it's expanded, the older sides of town are in disrepair. And you're starting to see that the middle class is choosing to move into nicer neighborhoods further to the outskirts of Warner Robins because the infrastructure is new, the homes are new, so they all look nice. And in comparison to the north side, you're seeing that the schools on the south side are much nicer. So because of the way the city's developed, the north side is now in a position where they're a little bit more desperate. And we know that the causes of crime have a lot to do with a lack of resources or just being in the middle of a lot of poverty, particularly when there's not a lot of poverty not very far away.
Right. So you're essentially telling the story of a tale of two cities. You're saying that there's been disinvestment in the north side of town, and that disinvestment has led to an atmosphere and a society that is crime-ridden, that is downtrodden, and is pushing people from wanting to stay over there.
It's pushing the middle class, yeah. And so it's not necessarily that they're not investing.
I don't want to touch
yeah,
on. When you say middle class, exactly who are you referring to within the middle class?
So anybody that can afford to live where they want to live. And now, if you want a mansion, that's different.
Understood.
But
Right.
For example, I think you would be incredibly naive if you wanted to send your kid to Warner Robins High School. My friends and family, I wanted to send my kids to Warner Robins High School. But if you just look at the quality of the school compared to what it was, and you can afford to choose to send your kids somewhere, you're going to want to send them to Veterans or HOCO. And that's particularly a reason why people send their kids to private school.
So is that two different issues, though? Are we talking about education versus community? Which
I think it's intertwined.
But I don't think the city would have
much of an effect
or impact
it's a domino effect
on the education. I think that's when we start going into leadership as far as superintendent and teachers and
I disagree.
The teachers that they're hiring, right?
I disagree with that because the superintendent is working with what he's got.
Right.
And if he's working in the lower income side of a community, well, those are the cards he's dealt with.
Right.
And for example, I want to bring up how Veterans and HOCO came up. Now, I heard this story from a teacher, and it's from a while ago when they built HOCO and Veterans High School. I think that they were trying to figure out where to invest in making the school bigger.
Right.
Warner Robins wanted to make Warner Robins and Northside High School bigger, but instead they actually built two new schools. They built Veterans and HOCO. Now, the mayor at that time could have been very strategic and known, hey, if we build two new schools, the middle class will want to go to the new schools. And so our government at the time just kind of let it slide and didn't think about what strategies to implement. But if I were the mayor at the time, I would have changed the zoning. I would have made the north side much more denser to force the Houston County Board of Education to actually invest in Warner Robins High School and Northside High School, because I think that we're not very proactive. We're very reactive. And so when it comes to crime or even our education system, we have to think ahead and step back and look at the whole picture. Crime isn't just because one person does something. Maybe if in an isolated instance, but if you're noticing a trend, then you actually have to step back and look at the whole picture.
Now, let me ask you about crime. Just, do you think that there's also an association with the growth of Warner Robins, that you're going to always have some little crime that's going to carry on with it? I think if you look at the overall number and compare it into the past, which of course was a different time, is it really that big of a change when you're looking at how many people have come into the city, and as far as we're low on murders, there hasn't been, there is a specific level of crime on the north side of town and maybe a little bit on the south side, because there's break-ins everywhere.
Well, this administration would disagree with you. Consistently, the police department here at their town halls, they've said that there is no difference between what neighborhood you're in and seeing what type of crime. As a matter of fact, the chief of police, which a year ago I had gone to a town hall meeting, and I asked him, I said, look, we're noticing more poverty move into and I'd like to get into why we're seeing more poverty on the north side. But I said, we're seeing more poverty over here. Don't you think that has something to do with the increase in crime? And then he goes on to say that actually crime is not up, but also poverty and crime have nothing to do with each other, which they clearly do.
They do.
Yeah.
I want to.
And I don't think I answered his point. You said, is the city just growing? Well, the city's expanding.
Mm-hmm.
Where is the crime happening? It's happening particularly in the north side, and then it's kind of seeping out from there. So when the city grows, I don't think it counts as growth if you're expanding. Because if you live on, let's say you're a longtime resident of Warner Robins, and you've lived in Green Street for 50 years, and the city grows, but it's growing away from you, that doesn't mean anything for you. Mm-hmm. If anything, that just means that resources that should have gone into your neighborhoods are being used to spread out. And it's not really fair when they build all these new suburban developments way over here. And then the people that the government was supposed to look out after, they're being left behind.
So when he brought up the idea of possibly this being a twofold issue, because I want to go back to education, I don't necessarily think you're wrong in one regard, that the creation of services and programs and the ability to reduce poverty here in the north side of town is definitely going to make it better at the schools. If you have access to food, kids are able to do better in class. We've seen the studies and things like that. But I also recognize that with the Board of Education being a county issue, there are other stipulations that will make it harder for you to do just any and everything unilaterally the way that you would want to, without having that relationship with the Board of Education.
Well, I think that's why you got to understand what's within the jurisdiction of each government. So the mayor and council are completely in control of the municipal code, the zoning code, and the building codes of Warner Robins. If you're seeing that there's not a lot of investment on the north side, you got to start to ask why. Well, I'll tell you why. It's has a lot more crime, so the businesses don't want to move there. The infrastructure is old, so there is no, why would you want to build a business where water leaks are consistent? And then there's also not a lot of growth happening in that side. So it's kind of like if you want something to change, you got to figure out what you can change. And the zoning code is really antiquated, particularly in Warner Robins, because it was built in the 50s. And, I saw the podcast and she said that I didn't know anything about the zoning code, but it's all public. Mm-hmm. You don't have to go to school for it. You could see that redlining was a thing. You could see why they put these certain requirements on how big your lots are. I sent you some information. They actually made a minimum lot sizes bigger. So you can't even build a starter home now in Warner Robins, because if you're going to build a new home, you got to make sure that you have this much more land than what was required before. And those things really perpetuate a sort of exclusion, which was meant for minorities back in the day. It was meant to exclude Black and brown people. And I mean, it was the 50s. Mm-hmm. And now it's really just kind of it just kind of stagnates things. It fulfilled its purpose for, I'd say, about 40 years. And we're at the point where the infrastructure is so old where, the people that wanted to perpetuate that sort of stuff just don't live here anymore. They're moving to the south side. Or really, they're just dying off.
True. But with that being said, then, if the goal is to bring more of a middle class, either economy or a middle class style living to either the north side or around there, I hear you talk about doing codes or zoning and things like that. Even if you were to do that, what assurances can you provide that the people who are already there that aren't able to provide or be able to have, afford a middle class house or anything like that, that they're not going to end up being gentrified, or they won't be pushed out, or that these new developments aren't going to make things a lot harder for them?
And that's why I want to go about it the way I want to. The way the mayor is doing it, I predict will have two consequences. Either it's going to gentrify the area, or it's going to be a colossal failure.
And you're saying just as far as the way
she's going
reawakening.
Yeah. I completely disagree with it. What they're doing is, she mentioned how it's a little bit further than the circle, but all the plans that we've seen is just commercial circle. My idea of rezoning would do a large part of the north side, almost all of North Davis to South Davis, Green Street. Because if you want to make change, you got to go big or go home.
Right.
Now, how do you do it without spending a lot of money? And it's completely free to change the zoning code, and then people are open to make their investments. With my concern with the commercial circle is she is buying up all the land. Mm-hmm. Then what? You just lease it out to a developer who's going to turn it into a shopping center. Mm-hmm. That's not a downtown. Right. We have that sort of stuff all over 96, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't like this side of town. I just don't think it has a sort of personality because of the way it's developed. The zoning code makes it so that everybody has to drive around. And Well, I thought they missed a huge opportunity with 96 where they could have made it walkable, but they didn't. It's because they've kept the same zoning, the same building codes and zoning codes from back then. And then you just kind of get this boring sort of development.
Do you think it brought more businesses to the city though?
Yeah, but those businesses are opportunistic. Like you might see a few of these like local shops open up, but they're really, you see a lot of chain restaurants and you see these coffee shops and you see Jiffy Lubes and you see these oil changes. Those people aren't really, how many of them actually live in Warner Robins?
Yeah.
That's the question. The people that live in Warner Robins are going to conduct a business that's beautiful, that they want to see in their own community. And then the sort of development that we have because of our zoning code, it just invites opportunistic people.
Yeah. Now, let's say let's do a what if. What if her plan was successful?
Well, it would gentrify everything.
Let's say if it was complete last year, hypothetically. Wouldn't that be what she was doing as far as what the people were asking for to beautify and to kind of get rid of some of the blight in that area?
And yeah, it would be what the people were asking for, but how many people have an idea of what urban development and city development is? A lot of people want a lot of things. How are you going to get it done?
Right.
And if things could just be awesome, well, everything would just be awesome. And we got to be realistic about how do we get that. If she is successful with this project Reawaken and she buys up all the land at Commercial Circle, well, that's a huge investment that the city's making. And if it's not successful, well, it's a huge failure. A lot of money going down the drain, a lot of time that we could have been spent actually doing other things. But if it is successful, it's going to gentrify the area.
All right, real quick. We use the word successful, but that could be subjective. And I definitely understand your line of logic and thinking where if we're not actively developing in the areas around Commercial Circle and what this downtown development is going to be, then the potential of individuals coming over here is going to be less likely anyways, because they might be scared, they might get robbed, they might whatever. Yeah. So I completely understand what you're coming or your angle on that is. But I guess the other idea of successful would be if this is a city ran or a municipal-led situation where we're not giving out to developers, where we are actively utilizing people in the community and making sure that they're keeping money in the community, is that something you would consider a success? And if not, what is something that you would consider a success in?
It might be a success, but the city was in charge of running its own infrastructure. Look how that turned out. The city has not proven to be trustworthy with these sort of things. So the idea that a city-led economic zone where there's coffee shops and things like that, I don't see it as realistic.
When you say the city, right? So just so we have point of clarification, you're saying that the city itself has not been up to par in doing this, that, and the other. Is that you saying mayor and council with this administration and past administrations together have not been getting it done and you have that path for the future? Or are you saying specifically within the past 4 years you have noticed that much of a separation of this administration from past administrations, and is that bad in your opinion that you feel like now it is time for you to come with that vision?
So I've seen particular issues with this administration that are really bad, but the truth is it's not completely on them.
Right.
This issue has been ongoing for the last decades. It's just we're at the point now where we can't keep kicking the problem down the road. So with the zoning stuff, that should have been changed a long time ago. Because of the way the zoning code was, Warner Robins was put into a position where it had to expand just to keep up with tax revenue. The way it works is this sort of suburban sprawl, it makes money for like the first 10 years when you don't have to maintain anything. I mean, just think about it. You put down all these neighborhoods and around one commercial area, and for the first 15 years, there's no issues. Everybody's paying taxes. The city's not maintaining anything. Everything's great. But because all those houses were built at the same time, 15 years down the road, all of them need new shingles.
Right.
All of them need to get painted at the same time. The road needs to get repaired. The plumbing, they have a lifespan about I think 15 to 20 years. They all need to start getting fixed. Now, that's really expensive. And the city does not tax anyone enough to maintain that infrastructure because we're so spread out. It's just not efficient. So what it does, and this is what it's done for the last 70 years, it'll annex more land. And the mayor brags about this. This is why I think this is a fundamental flaw in the philosophy that we have at City Hall right now. they actually want to keep annexing more land. And that was an idea I had too, because it just kind of makes more sense, but it's very short-term thinking, because you annex that land and then 10 years down the line, you're at the same issue, where this new development where they're all really nice big houses, but they just don't pay enough taxes to sustain its own infrastructure. So they're just getting themselves into more and more debt each time. Look, Warner Robins is headed into some deep trouble these next few years. I mean, you already see the infrastructure falling apart. My solution is not going to fix it overnight. I'm just saying we need to stop making the same mistakes over and over again, and then actually care about what our kids' future are going to look like. And that's really what I'm running for. I actually care about the long-term future. I'm not worried about an election 4 years from now. I'm concerned about what is the right thing for Warner Robins to do.
And I can appreciate that. I think a lot of people that will be watching this, and a lot of people who have seen you speak, whether it's your interviews or the forums that you've been in, say that you spend a lot of time speaking specifically on changing the codes or the zoning or those and the other. Can you actually break down, though, outside of that, what your first year budget potentially could look like, or how you would be spending those funds, or what kind of programs or specific things that you think would address the problems outside of just changing these type of...
So I'll answer that, but I like to compare with kind of what she's done and this administration. Now, it might not be her fault, because like I said, these mistakes are from the past are compounding onto us right now. Yeah. It's at the point where, it's really hard to annex more land. We're kind of landlocked. We're kind of bumping into Bonaire and Kathleen. So unless we take over those, which I had heard rumors that was the intention, to take those over. But this city, I think they're planning on just raising taxes. So either if they can't annex more land, they're just going to raise the taxes on the people that live in the city. Or if they can annex more land, well, they can avoid raising taxes on the people of Warner Robins, but that just means that the people who lived in Bonaire and Kathleen are going to pay more. Now, what my budget would look like, you really don't know until you get there. There's so much stuff that's hidden, particularly with public spending and or public safety. I've noticed there's a huge emphasis on giving out tickets and not a lot on putting policemen on patrols. We know where the crime is mostly happening. On the north side, I'm constantly seeing tags from gangs. We know where the gangs are at, and people are asking for police patrols. Instead of having an officer waiting at a corner, just kind of trying to catch someone making a mistake, we can put them where the crime is happening. Actually make it less likely for these areas to experience some sort of criminal activity. And then as people see this, they'll have more confidence in that area to actually open up a business. And if we change the zoning code, we'll start to see that people will add on square footage to their properties, to the actual building, which means more tax revenue for the city. Mm-hmm. It's a benefit for the people that take the property because now they can actually do something with it. And it's a benefit for the city because now they can collect more tax revenue off of it. So like I said, it's a long-term plan. It's not, the first year is going to be hard. I'm sorry.
Oh, you good.
The first year is going to be hard for everyone. And I think it's going to be hard for this mayor just because since she's been in the office, we've been spending, I think, I'm just kind of ballpark the numbers. Her first year was like $3 million that we took from our savings account. Then it was like $6 million. And then her third year, it was like $11 million. And this year we're at $16 million. Now, if you look at the budget, we have, I think it's like $2 million left in the savings account. Like I'm seeing the trend. Everybody's in deep trouble. That's why we have shortages on animal control. That's why we're not giving raises out to people. And that's why you continue to see us playing catch up with the infrastructure.
So I would be remiss if I didn't, not necessarily push back on this, but it's something that I've kind of noticed. You will talk about how you have public information, and then you'll talk about either rumors or something you've heard. Mm-hmm. Can you speak a little bit, without revealing sources and stuff like that, to the validity of the information that you feel you're getting that might not be public information that is pushing the things that you're saying?
Well, what sort of topic?
Just real quick, during the forum that the Winning Church or whatnot, there was the question about the forensic audit and whether or not that they would do it or not. And then I don't know if it was a slip up or whatnot, but you said there's some shady things going on in the country or in the city, or so I've heard. Right. So that would be.
I can address that. I don't want to give my sources out. I haven't gotten permission to say exactly what is wrong. Mm-hmm. But like Joe Musselwhite, he's the former. I forget what the title was.
He was over the He's over the workers.
Public Works.
Public Works. Yeah.
So he's very in favor of a forensic audit. Now, this is someone that's worked in the city for a really long time, and this was pre Loranda Patrick's administration. And he was telling me we're in desperate need of a forensic audit. Now, right now, there is a Department of Community Affairs. They're actually investigating Warner Robins on a complaint on how we've been using funds for from the hotel motel tax. Now, this is, like I said, I didn't come in prepared to have my campaign be on this because this is like breaking. But next month in November, there's going to be a court hearing on this sort of stuff. So there will be an audit coming in anyway. It's just now it's kind of out of the hands of Warner Robins. And I would like to maybe provide you with more information on that later.
Okay.
But that's something that you'll see next month.
Okay, like I said, I definitely wanted to bring that up because if there is other information that you might have, and we're not privy to it, then it kind of feels like we might not be able to have all of the, the nuances.
Well, I mean, just a simple fact, with our budget, why are we spending so much? Like we have our payroll alone was 57 million when the money we get for the payroll is 52 million. So we're already way over budget when it comes to this sort of stuff. And that's because the city is running off of debt and we're pulling money from our enterprise funds. Now, I spoke about this at the debate also, and the mayor brushed it off. She didn't actually answer the question because she says, well, the money from the enterprise funds, that's, the sewage, the water and the trash, that belongs to the city. It's an asset. But in the same way that it would be wrong of me to fund one of my businesses with another business, it just kind of means that the business you're funding is going bankrupt. And the same way, because we're pulling so much money from our water funds and the water enterprise, we have to start to wonder, well, why wasn't this money being used on actually updating the infrastructure? And that's exactly what hasn't been happening.
Right.
So just kind of stepping back and looking at it, you can kind of start to realize that there's some things that are going wrong.
I want to circle back to crime. So there's one thing that you said, I can't remember where you said it, but you said you do the crime, you do the time, which everybody knows that slogan. So can you be specific about what policies or what programs you'll put in place in the communities that you keep reference and what you would put in place and what you would do?
So the crime, it's a two-part issue. There's a short term and the long term. The long term is a city development. Like if you see, all right, we know that poverty and crime go hand in hand, right?
Right.
All right, no disagreement.
No.
Yet we continue to build welfare housing, particularly in the Northside of Warner Robins. We're exasperating that problem. We're not even maintaining.
Viewers, can you explain welfare housing?
Just so a lot of these income-based apartments that are popping up.
Okay.
Oscar Thorne Homes being that one was one that I'm not a fan of. You see that the Campbell apartments are in bad condition. Warner Robins is already getting sued because of that. Well, we're not taking care of our residents now yet. We're gonna
Oscar
try to
Tommy
take
Homes.
care. Oscar Thomas, I think.
Tommy.
Yeah. All right. Oscar Tommy Homes. It's right off of Ignacio or Inico. I forget which one.
Ignico.
Yeah. And we're clearly not maintaining the Section 8 or the government housing that we have now. And yet we're going to promote this new development happening. And then we know that crime is an issue, yet we're going to exacerbate the problem with putting more housing that's particularly low income based without concern with what jobs are going to be put around there. That's why I'm a fan of mixed use developments.
Right.
And we can actually lower the cost of housing in Warner Robins by having more housing. But we got to see if it's welfare housing, we're going to create something called induced demand.
So, but I know you were focusing more on middle class and creating opportunities for the
middle class. Just means safe and you can own it.
Okay.
And so middle class doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have a big yard and a white picket fence. It could just mean that you have your house and no yard. Like your house could probably go up straight to the street and you have like one parking space. But that's what would be a modern starting home for an urban city.
So how do we ensure that no one gets left behind or left out of the conversation when we're talking about, equitable living and having a safe space to live? So some of these homes that are being built on low income housing or on a low income based situation, they need it. So everybody can't be middle class.
But they don't live in Warner Robins.
That's true. Just to add on to that, because it sounds like he's also talking about what is the plan for upward mobility for the people who are already there, right? To not be pushed out as you're recruiting or you're bringing in more individuals, right?
With that is the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Having it so that the community can be more flexible creates mobility. If, let's say, you want to run a barbershop, a podcast, or some sort of business from your home, you really can't do that. Now, maybe a podcast because the municipal code hasn't gone around to that. But if you could actually add on a sort of add-on to your house where you could conduct business out of, that creates mobility. I grew up in a trailer park right off of Moody Road, and it was a Hispanic community. So everybody was kind of already used to this sort of under the table type of work where people were running businesses from their homes. Everybody that had a business in the trailer park moved out of the trailer park. Everybody that didn't kind of stayed. So the issue with the zoning code was, instead of those people, and now this is a private development because someone owned the trailer park, but let's say that everybody lived on Green Street, for example. You can own your own plot of land on Green Street. If everybody in the neighborhood was free to conduct business, you would see, one kid that's like, you know what, I'm a pretty good barber. I'm going to turn the garage into a barbershop. And then you're going to see one person that's like, you know what, I can whip it up in the kitchen. I'm going to start making sandwiches and then sell it to people. And if they can actually add on to their development, those people will actually make it cheaper to live in that community for the people around them.
They might.
Now, if you add the welfare housing, it's just a one and done. Like, you're living there with no mobility.
So it might make it better, but what is the plan? Let's say now you have 17 different random businesses operating within one residential area. What is the plan for traffic? What is the plan for parking?
There would be no traffic. It's walking.
But it's all. But we're saying if you have clients that are like, if I come from like Old Times Barbershop, right? Like, I'm really fire. You know who I am, and now I want to open my own spot over here. I'm bringing people from everywhere, from whether it's Kathleen or Perry or all throughout Houston County. They need somewhere that they're going to be able to park because they can't just walk from where they're at.
Well, I mean, particularly if it's a barbershop, just schedule them. There won't be a traffic problem because it'll be one at a time. Now, the issue with this is a question that gets asked a lot. The truth is, cities are a 30-minute radius. It's whatever you can get around to in 30 minutes. If you can drive to the other side of town in 30 minutes, that's your city. If you can walk to the other side of town in 30 minutes, whatever distance that is, that's your city. If people are living closer, they will drive. Now, this is where the government comes in and has to incentivize and disincentivize certain behaviors. If you incentivize driving cars, you will get more Jiffy Lubes. You will get more drive-through coffee shops. You will get more oil change spots because that's the market you're creating. If you want a walkable city, you got to start somewhere. Now, this is why I'm particularly a fan of the Northside, because the Northside has perfect streets for turning it into this. It has straight streets, whereas if you go on the south side of town, a lot of the neighborhoods are winding, which that's kind of set. Like, you turning that into a commercial area or a mixed use area is going to be difficult, especially without upsetting the lifestyle of these people. But on the north side of town, I mean, what do you have to lose at this point? It's falling apart.
It's not just that, though. So I ran 2021 for Post 5, which is the north side of town. So I spent a lot of time in this community just specifically speaking to the residents. None of them had ever talked to anybody who had ran for office. None of them even knew that the election was going on. But as I listen to their concerns, the things that they're asking for, I can see potentially how more home businesses within those areas might exacerbate those issues if those other things aren't addressed.
What issues?
So one was the constant speeding through there. The more and more people that you have that are going to be able to go to these, we don't know how many of them are going to care enough, right?
Well, that's when urban design comes into play.
Right. So those are the things that I'm trying to address. Like, how do we know that there's going to be the incentive for that if, like, let's just say, like, if we're in the States, right, and there's certain exits and stuff like that. But if I know that this place over here has a fish fry business, and I know this person over here has this hair salon, and this person's got the barbershop, and this person's doing that, then at any given moment, you are going to have more congested traffic. So what would be the plan for that?
Congested traffic, it's we'll solve that over time, because the truth is, this suburban experiment is new. People for thousands of years have lived in cities where people were living close to where they work. That's not it's not a new idea what I'm proposing. And here in Warner Robins, we're seeing that young people are leaving Warner Robins because they're choosing a more lively town. Mm-hmm. Warner Robins will never be that because we're just not letting it happen. Now, if you want to live in a suburban area, I recommend moving to somewhere with a homeowners association. It's not really fair for you to tell this single mom that she can't conduct business in a way that she sees fit within her own property just because you don't like the traffic there. Well, if you don't like traffic, move to a gated community. And we're at the point where our economy is going to get really tough because we're not flexible. I mean, you saw the Bay shut down. That's got a lot of people in Warner Robins worried. We're just not flexible. So we have to open the ability for us to do that. And if we keep this 1950s mentality of, well, you know what? I want a white picket fence. I want certain people not to go into my neighborhood. Because really, what does that mean? Certain people not to go into your neighborhood. It usually affects people that are minorities. Or they'll say, you don't belong here. Well, it's a public street. And if you don't want people speeding through the neighborhoods, well, that's when the city has to have smart urban designers where they say, you know what? We're noticing people are driving pretty quick here. We're going to put a raised crosswalk. That way, when cars go through, they are forced to slow down. Or they can have streets that are narrow because that actually makes people drive slow. If you have the city consistently talks about widening roads. I mean, that's not really a solution. You're creating more lanes for more traffic to go through and then bigger lanes for people to speed through. If you want people to slow down, you make the roads narrow and then they'll be careful by instinct. Try and do that. So it's you got to look at it as a holistic approach.
I do. And real quick, because you did mention about individuals leaving. So you're talking about brain drain. And that is a legitimate concern that Warner Robins has had. We talked about it during the 2021 election. It's obviously something that is a consistent issue because we don't have culture. We don't have anything inviting. We don't have any inclusivity for people to come back to want to do something. But it's not just about having access to the houses and stuff like that. And even if you were to change the codes for mixed development, what is your plan for attempting to entice actual industry to come to Warner Robins to make sure that we do have enough jobs for the people who are coming and for the people who are here? Because there is no economic empowerment. There is no economic anything on the north side of town. So I know you're mixed.
Well, we have the base. The base, think about this. The base, if you were a smart city, and I'm talking about like intelligent city, someone with the idea for urban planning, you would see that there's a lot of young people moving to the base. And young people like to have a walkable environment where, maybe there's a real downtown. But then I think I sent you the zoning code. You could look that in the areas that are meant for what would be considered downtown, I think it's C3 or C2 zoned areas. They require so many parking spaces for every square foot you add on to your building. Well, the whole thing about a downtown is that you can't find parking. You're supposed to take a bus to it and drive. And I'd like to get into public transport too, while we haven't seen it. But if you look at the zoning code, you'd think, well, it's ridiculous. How are they ever going to build something into a downtown when they got these requirements? And what it does is it makes it impossible for people like us to invest in our community. The only people that can invest in the community now are people that have the ear of the mayor and council and then have an economic incentive to offer them to actually get them approved. Because when something is built in Warner Robins, it's usually through an exemption or through an exception. It's an exception where they are changing the zoning code specifically for this developer. They are annexing the land specifically so that they can build whatever they want. Well, what about me? I'm a small guy. I want to open up a barbershop. I want to open up a little restaurant over here. And I own my land. I can't really get in the ear of the mayor and the council. They make me sit through the zoning board thing. And then at the end of it, they're just going to tell me no because it's zoned for a residential use and not a commercial use. But if you look at the successful businesses, they're especially like small businesses, they're put really close to these residential areas. So we're basically capping off the amount of land that people can conduct business on. And if you want more business, well, just stop capping it. I mean, am I making sense or?
To a degree, but like I said, more so, what is a plan? Because we all know that without Robins Air Force Base, Warner Robins lacks the ability to function, right? Like,
well, that's because we're too dependent on them.
Exactly.
We're not local enough.
Right. So the question would still be, what would be your idea to incentivize industry outside of trying to utilize it?
Yeah, I did skip that part. Yeah. All right. So with incentivizing something, that's when you do tax breaks, because the mayor can really, or not the mayor, the government can really only do a couple of things: take your money, let you keep your money, or put you in jail. And the sense of enticing businesses, let's say you really want to kickstart this revitalizing of the Northside. After you change the zoning code and let everybody play, and you want to incentivize someone to start the game, you tell them, well, you know what? I really would like for this section of land to be some big business that would bring other businesses. Well, then you say open to anybody. Whoever is going to build something in the design that we like in this area won't pay taxes, city taxes, for X amount of years. And then all of a sudden someone goes in there, and let's say it's a really big store. Then someone will see, well, you know what, this is driving some traffic. And you put a little taco shop next to it. And then someone's like, well, I want to live. I just can't really afford this sort of business, but if I can live here and work here, that's one mortgage I'm paying, and I can conduct business and make money here. And also, it just makes it easier for you to be around your family when you're living close to where you work. And that actually creates a community.
Gotcha.
Okay.
No, I was gonna say we can keep talking about that forever.
Yeah,
I can keep going on. Did you want to say something else? I think you had one more point.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
I would like y'all's opinion on that, because I'm saying a lot of these things, and it's completely within the jurisdiction of the mayor and council to do it. I mean, the municipal code can be changed with a vote. All it takes is the mayor and council to sit down one day, vote, and it's done. Now, obviously, you're going to want to read through it, get the vocabulary right. But first things first, we got to fix the DNA. You can't expect any sort of revitalization if we are still in the same, we're just still sick with the same regulations. So I don't know, like, what's your all's input on that?
What I would say, because this kind of leads back to what I was originally thinking about. We know for a fact that right now, all 6 people who are on council are going to remain on council because they're all running unopposed.
Right. That's a shame.
It is, and it does suck. It's very disappointing for the city. But I guess my question is, what is your plan to work with council as everything seems to be moving in, kind of conjunction with her plan? How do you feel that you will be able to win council over with everything that you're saying, which seems to be essentially a direct contradiction from everything that she is doing?
It is. It is. Right. So, and they seem to be big fans of her. I don't know if you saw the event. It's basically mayor worship. And so my thing is,
but it's been, just not to cut you off, but so you can speak on it.
Yeah.
But isn't that a good thing in a sense? Not to worship her, but the fact that we actually have a mayor and a council that are getting along, that they're actually trying to work things out.
I don't think it's a good thing, because diversity of thought is what breeds new ideas and good ideas. Yeah. When everybody's just kind of behind her, who's the mastermind? Particularly, I don't think that I'm concerned with what sort of incentives are behind their decision making. Now, and it's just because nothing has changed. It's a continuation of the same mistakes of the past, just with a new coat of paint. And so, what was your question about getting along with them?
Right. Essentially, like I said, with the idea that it feels they're all in tandem with what is being pushed. They've all agreed on it. They've all voted for it. So it's all on public record that this is something that apparently they're all in favor of. But if you were to come in as the new administration, you would still technically have the same council. You would have
to contend with them.
Right. You would have the same city administrator, those kind of things. And it feels like with everybody who's already been put in place with positions that aren't going to be taken away, whereas you're going to be the new person on the block. What is that plan to kind of start?
Well, if I win, I would have the mandate of the people. Because they bragged about how nobody's running against us because we're doing such a great job. No, it's not. It's that people gave up. They don't pay attention anymore. Now, my campaign is actually forcing some people to pay attention just because it's out of the ordinary. But if I win and they are continuously going against me, what does that mean for their chances of reelection? Because people voted me in because they wanted something different. And now it really is, when dealing with anybody, it's the carrot and the stick. And if you're consistently treating people or giving them people what they want and being nice, well, that's not really going to be, it's not going to progress into anything good, because it's like a spoiled kid. You actually got to battle with people. And in that, we'll see new ideas come up. If I'm elected, one of the first things I'm going to call for is a change to the zoning code. We'll find out who's not with it. And then I could start to actually do public talks with, let's say, one councilman and the people, his constituents. I could actually go out and talk to those constituents and tell them, hey, this person didn't want this. How do you feel about it? Why would you continue to support him if he is withholding the progress that we could see in the city?
I'm not mad at that.
You think that turns you into a lame duck? Because
well, that's why it would be important to act fast. I'm not concerned with a second term. I'm concerned with doing the right thing on the first time.
Right. But even if that were, because you're talking about a contention that would possibly happen or as early as March of 2026. So now
I think mayor comes in January.
That's what I'm saying. So you're going to be in
January where I start doing some stuff.
Well, yeah. If you are actually if you are actually going to do a day one attempt of the change, in which you're saying you're going to do, then fine. It would possibly be as early as January, right? So you would know. So now you technically have 4 years of the city not actively moving.
What do you mean by that?
Because, because now you're at a standstill because you want this, they want that, and there's no real middle ground and a compromise. What do you see that there can be a compromise for what you want?
Every year there's elections. So
every 2 years, right?
Every 2 years. So let's say for the first time I go for it, they say no. Well, then I can start to lobby. I can actually go into where these councilmen are representing and start talking to them and say, hey, you know what? Send them a letter, call them, tell them you're upset, because honestly, I don't see any way forward in keeping taxes down unless we do this.
Okay.
Taxes are going to have to go up if we don't change the way the zoning works.
All right. So let's just say, for sake of argument, that you aren't able day one to get that. Do you feel that it is ineffective to not move to other parts of the agenda while still pushing to get them towards that?
Because it's all three at the same time. If you want to make the Northside safe, and you got to improve the economy there, and you got to put public safety there, more police officers patrolling the area, and then you actually got to find a way to incentivize the middle class to go there. It's not just one part. You got to do it all at the same time.
How do you get the police department to work with you with certain comments that you've had about the police chief, either misrepresenting data, facts, or straight out lying?
Well, the mayor's their boss.
The mayor's their boss, but there is a relationship that, and this is coming from somebody who really has a lot of issues with the way that policing in America, let alone Houston County and Warner Robins. So I'm not even advocating thin blue line, none of that kind of stuff. I'm being realistic about the culture, about how hard it could become to push some of the things. Or
the mayor can fire and hire a new chief of police.
So are you willing? I guess that would be the question then. Are you willing to go that far?
Yes, I am.
Fair enough. And
if you want change, you got to change people.
Hey, fair enough. And I appreciate
that's straightforward.
So what's your ideal vision for the police department?
I got to preface with the police department. I haven't heard of anything crazy out of it. I haven't heard of any sort of abuse of power. I really blame it all on the mayor, because the mayor is the boss of the police. Now, the police can't really do their job if you're telling them, hey, we want you to make the north side safe, but you're going to keep the north side broke. And well, it's just a never ending thing. You're just going to keep sending them into the battlefield, and the police are going to get demoralized. If you say, hey, I'm going to send you to the north side, but look at all the work we're doing to actually improve it, I think, people would be happy to actually be able to see some sort of change.
I think it's a little difficult if, with public safety being 53% of our fiscal 2026, meaning most money is going to already be allocated to more police officers, at what point do you find money that can be allocated to those services that would provide the police officers not needing to be over there as much?
What sort of services?
So if we're talking about, like you said,
my plan is completely free.
Well, we get that, but
incentivizing people to go is just free.
Right. But what I'm saying is, if you're agreeing that poverty and crime go hand in hand, and if the reduction of poverty is also going to substantially lead to the reduction of crime, then just putting more police officers out there isn't necessarily that. But if the budget is only allocated to more police officers, how do you tend to allocate parts of that to these other parts of the programs that need to be put in place to make sure that
Well, what sort of programs?
Let's say if it's access to like city ran either municipality grocery stores or community market, community gardens, things along those lines.
Well, I don't believe in city ran I mean, to me that sounds a bit like kind of socialist or something like that.
You're providing opportunity though.
Yeah, I think it would be in providing the opportunity. And you do that, like, let's say I wanted to, by rezoning, you provide the opportunity blanket to anybody that already owns property there. That includes homeowners and business owners. A business owner that said, well, you know what, this is a decent spot for a restaurant, but I don't have enough parking space for it. Now they can put a restaurant there. Or let's say a homeowner that said that provides that. Now, in the form of,
you're banking on the free market to take care of the city, and I don't believe that. That's what I'm trying.
So, what sort of because think like
foundationally, I don't necessarily think the free market has any incentive to take care of the ones that it's going to leave. Which is why when we talk about city ran, it actually becomes part of the community to where they have an invested interest to keep it. So when I talk about what's it called? Piggly Wiggly leaving in 2016, and we only have Giant Foods, and we only have the neighborhood Walmart on Green Street. There's no access to food. Providing that through the city allows the city to keep it and to do those kind of things. Socialism isn't necessarily the problem. The police are socialistic, the military is socialistic. That's a whole another conversation. But what are those incentives to make sure that the community has those access? Because if we just bring another grocery store in here, it's going to have another profit margin that it has to hit. So the minute that it doesn't do that, it's gone. So that's why we're talking about more of an investment into actual city ran things.
Well, that's why I want incremental growth. You can't just drop something and expect it to work, even if it was a city led project. Like I've seen, especially because of the New York race, I started looking into these grocery stores that could be city led. From what I've read and understand, that really only works when there's literally no one else providing that service. In Warner Robins, you have that. So how that would fit in Warner Robins, that's something that maybe we could try on a small scale.
Clarify that real quick, though, when you say you have that in Warner Robins, because we're saying on the north side of town, we don't have that. We don't have access to
you have around the north side. It's not really in the north side, but I would argue that it's not there just because it's not safe and the infrastructure is old. So other than that, I don't see why else someone wouldn't put a small convenience store that has these things in the middle of it.
Because we're talking about...
Because there's a population, there's a market there, but something's disincentivizing people to go there.
But if we're talking a full-scale grocery store or something along those lines, even if it's not necessarily the city buying a building and then funding, staffing, all of that kind of stuff, let's just say it has access to a city facility that can every week participate in some type of community market ran thing where now you are bringing local vendors, local community, those kind of things. Being part of the fixture of the community is also what allows, like you said, the reduction of crime, because now you have people talking to each other again. Now you have people actually being able to sell their stuff without, I mean, you probably might have zoning or codes that you might need to look at, but we already have the community market that does it every Thursday.
So, okay, I think I understand. First, you got to change the zoning code. That's like a given in my eyes. Now, these other extra, like let's say a local flea market that actually promotes businesses to come there, and then this sort of city involvement in these areas, I do think that could work. I just don't think, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves when you want to talk about that without addressing the core issue. And so with the city-led...
I see that as the core issue, and I think that's the difference that we have.
And I would argue... Why? I mean, you look at the infrastructure, the city's supposed to maintain it.
Because food insecurity is the biggest issue that they're facing. And if we don't...
Is it, or is it getting like shot and mugged?
No.
It is definitely food insecurity. Because how many homicides would you say are happening in comparison to the fact that SNAP just got cut? We have articles constantly talking about food banks and community centers are being overran because people don't have access to food.
Okay.
That is going to consistently happen more and more and more. So what is the plan to address that, especially if we're talking about the revitalization of the north side? If they can't even eat, they can't be revitalized.
All right. So I think I agree with you, but I think we have to be realistic with what's in our budget. I mean, we had to pull $16 million from our savings account. That's why I'm not really prone to even discuss these sort of topics because I don't even think we're in a position to like give a realistic opinion on it at the moment. The way we do it with, like, for example, the food security thing, I would argue that the reason you're not seeing businesses move there to provide that is because it's just increasingly difficult because of the safety, the infrastructure, and the zoning. If we loosen that up, I do believe that we'll see something move in there. And if we're not, that's when you can incentivize it with a sort of tax incentive where you say, this business, we want another grocery store to move in here. We're going to tell this, whoever it is, you're not going to pay taxes for, let's say, 5 to 10 years. They move in there, and then because now people are moving to those areas, after you've changed the zoning code, someone can say, well, you know what? I'm going to feed off of the fact that there's people going to this area, and I'm going to open up another business around it. And then once you see this, the city will generate more tax revenue because there is actual growth happening this way and not this way.
But you will have, if you get elected, you will have the power to partner with nonprofit groups, partner with Fort Valley State to bring in those fresh vegetables, fresh fruits,
and those, I think that'd be a great idea.
Those resources that they don't maybe have that access to.
Because I'm imagining you want something more immediate, because my plan is a long-term plan. Yeah. I would argue with this: if you want something more immediate, why hasn't the mayor done it? And I don't blame her for not doing this, because I'm sure if she could do that, that would be a political win. I wouldn't even run for office. There would be no debate over how great she is if she did the things you did. I argue that she's not doing those things just because it's not feasible. Right. Not at the moment. It's kind of like public transportation.
So two things. One, I do agree that it's not feasible if we're not looking at it from that perspective, because we keep looking at
perspective.
Right. So if we keep looking at crime as consistently only going to reduce because police officers are making the place safer, we're not actively putting money into things that will make crime reduce. We just see police who, like you said, were only reactive. Police are reactive. They're not proactive. They are responding to the crime, or they're perpetuating a point of like, hey, we know there's possibly going to be crime, so we're going to go over there. So that's not necessarily addressing the crime. That's addressing the fact that, hey, we have police officers here. So
the police officer would be more of a deterrent. And to actually get the crime, you would have to create that sort of economic mobility. And that economic mobility, it just doesn't happen overnight.
So it doesn't. But do you feel like creating more programs for kids? So a lot of people say the kids don't have any kind of resources, no community centers, no, they have the InnoLab that they're working on, or right. She said that they're in the process of creating programs. Yeah, their programs.
Nobody's really using them.
Yeah,
so it's not open.
See, I don't really blame the kids. I blame the parents. Well, because they're not working.
But at the same time, but don't you have some type of incentive as far as what programs would you put in there that will deter crime instead of bringing police in?
With the programs and stuff like that, I'm not against them. I just think that programs are something that like a nonprofit could do, and that the city could back up a nonprofit. The city should really be concerned with infrastructure, urban design, and public safety. Anything else, I think, is stretching the city that's already kind of stretched thin out more. If there's a nonprofit, or if there is any organization that is willing to do these things, I think that's when the mayor as a public figure comes out in support, puts their face on it, and motivates it. But the idea that the mayor should be doing it, the mayor has a very specific job. It's to keep the city running. And these programs that I know this mayor, at least she seems to be getting in front of a lot.
I would say the administrator now, based off of how the charter is set, is more so the day-to-day. And I would say that the mayor is essentially a face for bringing...
And I would argue that it shouldn't be like that.
It might not be. Yeah. And if that is the case, now you're talking about changing charter, right?
Right. And so that's a whole other discussion now.
Right.
Does the mayor want to change the charter? That's another thing. I want to change. I'm not in favor of, particularly if I'm running for mayor, I'm running for mayor because I have a specific vision. Right. I'm not going to run for mayor just to hand off the power to James Drinkard. I mean, I'm sure he's a great guy, but I mean, there's a reason I'm running for mayor. I have an idea. Like, I could actually show you a map of Warner Robins and tell you what I want to be zoned. Mm-hmm. I have this vision for a nice, beautiful park where GMC is. The city already owns a lot of that land. Really, we could maintain it. I would like to rezone the areas around it into mixed-use developments. And I think that a beautiful downtown could spring up over the course of 15 years.
Right. So I understand that there's been some back and forth between you and the mayor, not personally, but the fact that I guess she makes comments or has.
Well, she thinks I'm bullying her, and
the simple fact about your qualifications, that you have to have an education to be qualified. But so I do understand you're a small business owner, right?
Right.
So I get it. There's a big difference between small business owner and running a city government.
I agree.
So there's one deals with profit margin, one deals with public accountability. So if you were put in that place, how will you be able to transition and move into a more government role?
Well, I mean, you got James Drinkard. I believe he's good at what he does. You have the city attorney that helps with legal matters. And the mayor, like you said, you think that right now it maybe should be a position that's more of a figurehead. So
I think it is at this current moment.
At this current moment, and I completely agree. It really is just a sort of figurehead. I think someone needs to take charge with a vision, and along with the vision, what's the plan? And the plan is changing the zoning code. And if you're really interested in like getting into the nitty gritty about it, I'm a fan of Strong Towns, the organization. I think they have wonderful information on what actually creates downtowns, how cities can be profitable, and the sort of ideas that they want to implement with urban design, how to make a street more walkable, by narrowing the streets, things like that. You don't have to be a genius to learn these things, but you do have to have the will, and you have to have the political will. And I think that we lack a sort of person with their own political will. My political will in Warner Robins is to see it turn around. I want to see it get better. I question whether she even is concerned with Warner Robins or if she's concerned with a position after she's the mayor. And I think when you're running for a mayor of a city, what are your ultimate end goals? I would like to live in Warner Robins for the rest of my life.
Okay. At
the rate it's going, I'm not. I really want to send my kids to Warner Robins High School and Huntington Middle School and Russell Elementary. I don't think that's going to happen now. If I win the election, I mean, I'm going to do everything I can so that by the time my kid's 15, because I don't have kids at the moment, but by the time my kid's 15, I would love for him to be a proud Warner Robins alumni. And I care about tradition.
I disagree.
What?
Because
you're Northside.
Yeah. But
we'll fight later.
I definitely hear a lot of what you're saying. Obviously, I think on the spectrum, we're probably on opposite ends in certain regards. But I think there is some middle ground. And
I think we need both of us, we need someone that's interested in what the government can do on social roles, but you also need someone that's very understanding of what's within the authority, what's very practical at one moment, and kind of on the boring side of things.
I'm all for pragmatism, but I also recognize that if we do have the ability to work within mayor, council, and administrator the way that the charter's set, it's going to be really difficult to break that. So if you do want to have more power as the mayor to be able to kind of push a little bit of these things, because I'm not against the idea of if I have the data, if I know it'll work and I believe it'll be best for the people, let them find that out after it works. I'm fine with that, right? Ask for forgiveness rather than permission. Cool. But it doesn't feel like at the way that things are set up, you'd be able to do a lot of these things because, like you said, even if it takes a vote, you still need those people to do it.
Yeah, but it'd be pretty easy to find out. That's the thing.
But now that's why I say, like, if you're not willing to start pushing towards other parts of the agenda or doing whatever's best for the citizens outside of the planning and zoning, because there are all kinds of other things that the mayor potentially could be pushing, and then you're using those 2 years to just lobby the people who are there, how does that benefit Warner Robins?
So, I mean, 2 years is a long time to do a lot of different things. My priority would be into pushing for the change I think is necessary. As time comes up, I'm passionate. I'm not necessarily a fan of how she went about this homeless shelter, but I'm very passionate about the animal control. I'm very passionate about the animals that are on the street. Those sort of things I'm concerned with. I just don't think that the voters should be concerned with these issues when there's some really big issues hanging over us.
Let's go back. What's your issues with the homeless shelter?
Well, it's less than a mile away from the proposed downtown.
Mm-hmm.
if I was a business owner, I wouldn't want to be that close to a homeless shelter. If I was a business owner in the downtown area, I would be concerned with that. I mean, you're already seeing homelessness go on the rise. Now, particularly with a homeless shelter, a lot of these people are homeless by choice or by mental problems or drug problems. I would argue there's not many people that are just kind of down on their luck. Those people, if you really are down on your luck, you can bounce back up, especially if you're a good person. People want to help those people.
Mm-hmm.
But I've taken videos of, I'll see someone sitting in their filth with a sign all day begging. And then when they leave, there's a dumpster not even that far away, but then there's just like filth wherever they left it. I don't want to give that guy a home. I think it would be unfair. I think that guy just created a crime. He littered and like an insane amount. I think you need to have compassion for the right people. If there's a homeless shelter that's geared towards the people that are down on their luck, but I mean, some people just for example, I know there's people living in the woods. If you live in the woods and you keep your area clean, I don't have a problem with it. It's a free country. But if you're going out onto Watson Boulevard and just making a mess, I don't know. I don't feel bad for you at that point.
So you're not an advocate for helping build the community as far as looking out for mental health individuals.
I don't think that you do that with. This is a very complex issue because I do think that some people need to go to jail, and now we have our jails that are too full. I'm really concerned about what it's going to do for Warner Robins when they start to release these repeat offenders out. Now they say it's going to be a probation violations and things like that, but that's how it starts, But it's going to pile up into something else.
You're essentially talking about criminalizing homelessness, but
no, I want to criminalize littering.
Right, but if they don't have anywhere to put it,
there's dumpsters all over the place.
Okay, so
I might even change the zoning code to let people put it into dumpsters. Okay, that would solve the problem.
But as you said, this is a complex issue. So if there aren't any you're talking about recidivism because they're going to continue to commit the same crimes once they come back out, this, that, and the other.
And it progressively gets worse. The sort of crimes they commit every time.
But if it's the same thing that we're talking about as providing for individuals, if we're talking mental health services, even if you were to partner with a nonprofit or anything along those lines, wouldn't that be a lot better of coming up with funds to use for that specifically than just putting them in Perry jail?
And I would agree if we had the money. Now, this is where we have to have a really honest look with our budget. You could look at the budget that we have, and you're going to see some things, but it's not very clear. Really, you'll know the truth when you're in office and you get to see how much money do we actually have, where could we put it? Because if there's a big pile of money that I could use to help people down on their luck, I think it would be immoral not to do it.
Understood.
But at the same time, why hasn't it been done? Is there just not there is definitely a political will. That's the thing. Doing these sort of things would ensure she stays another term. The homeless shelter took a long time to get built. It was supposed to be done in 2022. And it's taken this long. You got to wonder why. And is it pragmatic is the question. I think if a church were to do something like this or any sort of nonprofit, I think the mayor should be 100% on their side, giving them security, even if it's a sort of promoting on these things so that they can get it done, because probably the city doesn't have the money, but it has the resources to help with these things. I'm all for that sort of stuff. When the city starts to do it, they haven't been successful in the last 30 years. I mean, what makes you think they're going to continue to be successful, especially when the underlying issues haven't changed? They've only gotten worse.
I think that's a fair question, but I also think that just giving things to faith-based organizations, especially when it comes to homeless shelters.
Well, I wouldn't be giving them anything. It would be like security,
right?
Public services.
But the problem is, if we do have the ability or the facility for it and it's owned by the city, then the city has more of an ability to have stipulations that don't stop certain folks, right? That was one of my contentions that I had with Mayor Patrick, was
making sure that it wasn't religiously
if it wasn't
secular.
So at that point, is it better to do that, or is it better to have the city be able to do that?
So I could make a promise right here. I could have, and I'm a fan of an audit, and I think it's going to come anyway after November. But with an audit, it'll be all public. We'll all see it. I'm not going to keep any secrets. And then if we see that there's money laying around for that sort of stuff, I'm very happy to have a discussion with the community over, do you want a homeless shelter? Do you want a city run a grocery store? Do you want these sort of things? until then, I think it would be, I'd be getting ahead of myself discussing these sort of things because it's not the core issue. And there's no way of us really knowing what's possible until we get a look at the budget.
I mean, I can respect that.
Yeah.
Stand on
and it's not to downplay anything because, I like, for example, I really want to do some stuff with the animal shelter. I haven't talked about it because I don't know if it's possible. I was sad to hear that the animal shelter, one of the private ones that was a volunteer group. I have a friend that would volunteer there often, and they're going to shut down, I think, in November or December. That upsets me a lot. I would start making promises if I could. I think I got to respect the citizens and tell them what I actually believe.
Okay.
Good thing that you mentioned promises. Mm-hmm. So, in a nutshell, what is your overall vision for the city of Warner Robins? And can you give at least 2 promises?
All right. First promise is I'm going to do everything possible to get the zoning codes changed and the building codes.
So that's your biggest thing.
That's my biggest thing. If I don't get that done, I consider it all a failure. And honestly, it would be very heartbreaking because I don't think Warner Robins has a chance financially or even as a community if we can't get people walking around their neighborhoods, because that's how you build a community. I mean, we're having an overweight problem. That's because people, as soon as they leave their house, get off the couch, they get in a car, they sit down, and they go to the movie theater and they sit down there. And so I think unless we can fix that, we're just going to get the same old boring freeway town, because that's what we are. We're a freeway town, particularly this side of 96. It's just, it looks like every other city. So for example, I think that groundwork is fundamental. The second promise is transparency. Like, I plan on opening up paperwork. Why can't I see what's in the bank account? Like, that should be pretty simple. And then honestly, with the technology we have nowadays, it should be as easy as just opening up the city website. So those are the 2 things, because once we have all the information, we can have an honest discussion, particularly with crime. We know where the gangs are at. Why don't they just tell us where they're at? Why don't they tell us, hey, Keith Drive has the Keith Drive Crips. The Grove has this.
Do we really have any real gangs here, though? Like, what's your opinion on the bust? So with the recent activity that happened last Wednesday, so there was a criminal investigation that they ran for about a year or 2 with alleged individuals with gang activity and a lot of possession charges.
We're seeing a lot of like disorganized little bands, And so I think, I forget what year it was, but I think it was Will Kendall who talked about and this was several years ago, that what we're seeing in Warner Robins are hybrid neighborhood gangs that are mixed with like bigger gangs.
Okay.
And really, as a resident of the community, I would want to know everything I could about these things so that I could keep my kids safe and away from them. If it's a particular neighborhood that has it, I don't know, put posters up, like tell like, hey, 1300 means this right here, because I'm seeing the number 1300 tagged on certain walls. And so why can't we just be open about that? To me, it's just, the more you know, the more informed you can be as a citizen, and the more you can hold people in power accountable.
Yeah, I didn't mean to throw you off on your promises and what
that's the first time I've been asked. Yeah,
what your overall vision is, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think obviously there's a gang culture, there's gangs, there's drug wars, there's drug issues. There's a whole bunch of different things that kind of go into it, and it's a more nuanced conversation than, hey, we can just post up over here because we know they're going there, or let's just put these symbols and stuff up like that so that people know. That does start to breed more of an issue, more of a safety issue. It's like, all right, now you're basically telling all of our information, so we got to go after you. So I feel like there's possibly better ways to address that, but I do feel like that is such a hard issue. You know what I'm saying? So I wouldn't expect a specific way to handle gangs. Right?
That's why I think the long-term approach is increasing the economic mobility in this area, and then the short-term approach is kind of like chipping away at the problem. Transparency, having the more police patrols, that sort of thing is like, it's not this big thing, but you're chipping away at the problem. And in the meantime, you're creating economic mobility so that things get better.
But what I want to ask then is, if you do know where certain things are happening and you do have access to something similar to Flock or another type of camera system, what is your stance on it, and what would you be willing to use it for as far as surveillance and things like that?
I'm glad we're getting into this. I don't know much about the Flock thing, But I'm not opposed to cameras like people videotaping, especially if it's on a public road and this business has a camera, or even if there's like a city CCTV. I'm not opposed to that. I'm incredibly opposed to AI surveillance. I absolutely hate it. I think it's an infringement on our liberties, and it's more of a matter of principle over practicality at that point.
I think that's the argument me and
Yeah.
you were having.
I saw that. And
more so
Yeah.
so I would argue that me and you kind of align very much on that.
Yeah, I was a little bit against it, and but I understand. I understand both sides, but it just when you weigh the scales, he says freedom, and I agree with freedom, but at the same time, when you also want to say you have the same conversation about public safety,
Right.
Like if you always keep saying, "Oh, crime is up," you know, this is that, then
Well, it's so what sacrifices are you willing to make?
yeah,
and that's the slippery slope.
It
It's
is
a problem,
incredibly
though, because
slippery
how
slope.
far are you willing to give up that? At what point do you say, all right, well, it's just
And the
these
government,
cameras out
yeah.
here, but now
Right.
it's just these cameras that are at work. Now it's just these cameras
But-
in the house.
Okay.
Here's the thing.
But take-
Let's say this.
look.
Let's say this. Lorana doesn't like me, right? And she's and let's say I would argue, I would argue but let's say she has allowed Flock to come into the city,
That is my
and if
biggest
I win,
contention.
I would be in control of that.
but what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, I'm not
Like
I'm not
she
selling.
doesn't-
I'm
she
not
doesn't
selling
trust
dope.
me yet.
but-
She's willing to implement something that could be abused later on, and
That's the
I'm not
problem.
willing
Like,
to
if we
do
don't
that.
necessarily have all of the information, like I said, she said that she has more information and more data, and if
I don't
they're
trust those
and
companies.
if they're willing to publish that, that's fine. But like I said, it's more so outside oversight from. I mean, if the data experts and everything like that, and the constitutional issues of it, and the fact that it is literally already being abused for people that are finding women that they have abused and stuff. I mean, that there's way more incidents of that than people being saved by it. So that's the question. Like you keep saying the weighing of the scale, but the scale seems to be pretty low over here when we see how many issues versus the fact that I might feel safer.
So I kind of want to talk on that. The issues you brought up were a lot more local. You know, like let's say a woman getting abused or this and that. And let's step back even further. I don't like the direction this country's headed.
Mhm.
And it's funny because whether you're right wing or left wing, nobody likes it.
No.
This sort of information, it goes beyond Warner Robins. It goes beyond Georgia. I don't know. I'm pretty nervous about everything. That's why I'm running for mayor. I'm concerned about the state of the country as a whole, and then I'm seeing those issues creep into Warner Robins. I don't like the way that criminal justice has been handled throughout the entire country. I don't like the way that the government is expanding its power. I don't like how the government seems to not be focused on actually taking care of its own people. And then I started to see this sort of stuff creeping into Warner Robins. That's when I said, you know what? I think it's worth all the money and the time and the hate that I'm going to get. And I'm going to run for office because I know there's people that agree with me. I talk to them all the time. Just nobody's willing to say anything.
Right.
So, and I've seen him criticize and give props when it's due. And there's just not enough people like him. Like,
Thank you.
there's just not.
Mhm.
And
That's why he's here.
yeah, that's why he's here.
No, appreciate
And
it.
so with me, I'm seeing that there's a few people like him, but how many people are actually willing to try to get the job?
Right.
Because yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it sucks. Like the campaigning, it's the worst thing I've ever done in my life.
So
But I think it's important.
real quick on that, since I do have a prior experience with running, what was your thought process on saying, okay, I'm going to run straight for mayor rather than maybe running for one or three, or I'm not exactly sure geographically where you're living, but what made you decide to just completely bypass a council run and go straight to mayor?
Well, I don't trust the mayor and I don't trust the council. So if I was running as a council member, the mayor's going to drown me out and the other councilors are going to drown me out. Without getting into rumors, I mean, there's harassment that happens at City Hall.
Okay.
There's all unpleasantries that happen there. And there is a good old boy culture. I mean, it's funny to bring this up. They had a criticism of the fire department having a good old boy culture. And it's at the point where you can't even have like nicknames and stuff like that. Yet you have council talking about we're a family. Well, you know what? That sounds like a good old boy culture there.
But
If anything, I would argue that the fire department should have a sort of brotherhood and camaraderie, and then the city hall should be very cold and not very
I got to push back.
family like that.
I got to push back a little on the fire department because I do also have inside information about specifically what was going on and why certain people who were in charge ended up feeling like the culture had shifted or changed and stuff like that. And a lot of that coincided with the new police or a fire chief who came in there and he actually set standards and he set other things.
I haven't heard anything bad about him, but,
Right, but
I do know that like if we were concerned about a good old culture, a good old boy culture in the fire department. I mean, I'm looking at it right in the face at City Hall.
okay,
You know,
I feel you. Like,
and like that is a concern. So when I decided to run for mayor, it was, well, you know what? It sounds bad, but cut the head off the snake, you know, of the 7-headed beast, you know, whatever. But that's why I think it's important to run for mayor. Now, the city hall or the city council members, they're just not as popular of a position. Only a few hundred people will vote for those things. The mayor, on the other hand, will have the mandate of the people. That's why I am a radical shift on my agenda.
but real quick though, just based off of numbers alone, the person who's got the highest number of votes in any city election in Warner Robins was Derek Mack when he ran.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not even a down ballot thing. Like, it just depends on if people want to vote for
Well, I would argue Derek Mack, even though he got all those votes, which would be impressive, still doesn't have the power to make
Right,
it.
he doesn't.
You know?
I would just say though that
The city council really, in my eyes, looks like a council, as in like talking to the mayor. They're supposed to represent their people. So, for example, if the South Side wants something, that council member should represent the South Side.
you would say post 4.
Yeah, post 4. They would represent post 4. The mayor then would have to contend with all of them and what is for the best of the community. And then council would be a check and balance to the mayor. That's really council's a veto.
It is, but you do have those 2 seats though that are at large, so they are responsible.
And they would be responsible for the others, and I would see them as also a veto to say, hey, you know what? The mayor wants to do this thing. They just they think it's a bad idea, and that would be their way of kind of bouncing off them. But I don't think they should be friends.
I wouldn't say they shouldn't be friends, but I definitely think that when you said that diversity of opinion definitely should be respected, I don't think that they should always be lockstep. I think that there should be some type of you know, and
I just haven't seen that. So that's why why am I going to run for council when the rest of them are just going to keep in line and I'm going to be the one wheel that's crooked?
So before we wrap it up, I've got 2 questions. So I want to make sure that you got out everything that you, as far as your promises. I think you did name the 2, but I also want to make sure that you do have the opportunity to get your vision out as far as for the future of Warner Robins and what you would do if you were elected as mayor. But also, you mentioned something earlier about the state of the government or the state of the country right now. So just a hypothetical, let's say you are mayor. So you've seen the recent events as far as going on in Chicago and ICE and situations. And I'm pretty sure you have some type of compassion for that community, right?
Oh, do something.
Yeah, I'm assuming. Big assumption. But what would you do if you were in that position, if you were mayor, if they wanted to if ICE actually came here?
So real quick, just to add to that, there is something called HB 1105 that will potentially put municipal elected officials right in jail. So just so we put that stipulation.
I'm not going to jail. I'm gonna be honest, bro.
just to put that stipulation.
I'm not going to jail. We're dealing with the government. This is a bureaucracy. If you're not willing to play by the rules, then you're really a revolutionary or an insurrectionist at that point. I'm going to be playing by the rules. And that's why you need someone that knows the rules and has a solid plan on how to maneuver through them. With ICE, for example, I mean, I don't want to see people getting torn from their homes and things like that. But what power does the local government really have against the federal government? And in that case, I know one thing for sure. I can make Warner Robins a place that's a lot more walkable and a lot easier to live in if you can't drive, a lot easier to live in if you have a little less money, and a lot easier if you're nervous about these sort of things. So that's kind of what I would want to.
But the reason why I asked that is because of even though, of course, Chicago is a lot bigger than Warner Robins, but you have mayors that are like in Chicago and other places that will push back.
Right.
So,
well, it really just depends who you're pushing back against.
mhm.
The stuff in Chicago, I mean, I have my own conspiracy theories about what's going on. I don't want to get
Yeah, we
into
don't gotta
that
go
sort
down
of
the rabbit
stuff.
holes or nothing.
But the stuff with that, I mean, just know your lane. I think that's a really big issue. The citizen is the boss of the mayor. The mayor is the boss of the police force. So when people are telling the police, "Oh, I'm your boss," no, you're not. The mayor is their boss. You're the boss of the mayor.
Mhm.
If you don't like what the police is doing, you get rid of the mayor. If you don't like what the state is doing, well, then someone's got to step up and do that sort of thing. But I have a more pragmatic approach on that. Just,
Okay.
I'm not going to jail. Bro.
I feel that, so obviously I'm leaning more, as you called it, revolutionary. I definitely see a difference between that and insurrectionist. But I would say that it does come to a point where if you are man of the people and the people agree that it does feel like unidentified individuals that aren't allowing themselves to be announced or anything like that are randomly snatching your neighbors out of the street, which we see consistently. At some point, we would want the person in power or in charge to be the mediator, to be the person that's like, hey, we're not for that. We're not this, that, and the other. So I guess I feel like that's his question.
So with that, I saw the podcast where the mayor said she didn't realize that when she signed the contract, she was inviting Rolling Thunder into here.
Stuff like that.
Read the contract. Like, it's that simple. Pay attention to what's happening and really have a critical view of the government. That's why I have an extremely critical view of the government. That's why I'm not in favor of Flock. If we have Flock around, how is it going to be used? If you're right wing and you're concerned about sort of a COVID lockdown and you're concerned that they're going to be keeping a track over who's going to church on Sundays when they're not supposed to, well, you're right wing and that's the way you're concerned. If you're left wing and you're concerned about how immigration is going to use that with ICE and snatching people up, I mean, we both have the same concern, which is that system. And the people that allow this to happen don't have a concern with the government. I have that concern. I'm gonna be honest. I don't plan on going to jail for no one, but I am a man of conviction. I mean, that's why I'm running for mayor. I can't promise you that I'm going to be some sort of revolutionary and stand up against anything that I think is unjust, because really you only know when you're in there. I just know for a fact the mayor hasn't done that. And I think that in particular, I'm telling you right now, I'm going to obey the laws and I'm going to try to do what I know is legal within my authority to make Warner Robins a better place for everybody that's living in it.
Do you think that Warner Robins has the infrastructure for its own set of transportation, or do you think it would need to be an intergovernmental agreement between possibly all of Houston County, Bibb, and Peach to make it more of a real transit, or even just Houston County as a whole? Or do you possibly see that there could be transportation in some?
I would be more of a fan of something that the city's in control of. If we could work some sort of agreement out with these other cities, that'd be great. I don't see them in the position to do it, because the only reason let's say a bus system would work is if you have a section of Warner Robins that is walkable and people are living close to where they work. So you have all these people that don't necessarily have a vehicle or need a vehicle to get around because they're living in this area, they're working in that area. And then you have another section of Warner Robins that's also walkable, and you can connect that with a bus transit. There is nothing like that in Warner Robins, so we just don't have the market for it. Now, urban designers know that you can incentivize this by, if you were to lay, let's say, a public transportation system. Usually this is with trains because it's a lot more people. But let's say you were to have a sort of public transportation system, you would then rezone the bus stops or the train stops in order for it to be more walkable. And that's actually how you incentivize that thing. Warner Robins, I don't know how long they've had their bus system, but I mean, it's just been a failure. It's really charity. And I don't think the government is in the business of charity. The government is in the business of infrastructure. If you want charity, I think that there's room for the government to maybe be involved in some way. That would be called welfare. But, first things first, the infrastructure.
Okay.
That wraps up today's episode. A big thank you to Fabian Velazquez for joining us and sharing his ideas, his plans, and his vision for the future of Warner Robins. Whether you agree or disagree, conversations like this are what keep our community informed and connected, and that's what this platform is all about. If you enjoyed this discussion, make sure you like, share, and follow the Soul Fresh Podcast on all platforms. That's at the Soul Fresh Podcast, where you get your content. And as always, shout out to Mike Jones from Controversial Conversation Podcast. Follow him on YouTube at Controversial Conversation and on social media at JokestaBaby. All right, thanks for tuning in. And until next time, stay informed, stay inspired, and stay soul fresh.